It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Doug Haubert is here today. He is the city prosecutor in Long Beach. And we know that the voters recently passed what's known as Prop 47, three strikes reform. And what it does is it reclassifies certain felonies to misdemeanors, drug possession, petty theft, forgery, some grand theft, unless there's some priors. A lot of anger about it amongst law enforcement. Statements like, this is absurd, this is going to wreak havoc. What's your sense of Prop 47?
Well, I think there are a lot of unintended consequences, and you're absolutely right. It did reduce from felony to misdemeanor certain drug offenses like possession of cocaine, possession of heroin, and things like that. There are a lot of ramifications that people didn't understand at the time they voted on it, I'm sure. For example, just to give you one example. If someone is mentally incompetent, the state can hold that person if they commit a felony up to 3 years while the state tries to rehabilitate that person so that they're competent to stand trial, if it's a felony. If it's a misdemeanor, the most the state can hold them in a psychiatric unit would be 6 months to a year. So what we're seeing just in the last few weeks, we've seen a number of people released from state prison psychiatric hospitals, not because of any reason other than the charge they were being held for went from a felony to a misdemeanor. We're seeing that happen in a lot of cases. People are resentenced in state prison and they're resentenced down to misdemeanor, so the time they've already spent is essentially the maximum they could have spent as a misdemeanor. So they're releasing thousands of people, and it's kind of a shock to the system.
At the same time, there's a lot of pressure to the system right now. As we know, the Supreme Court in 2011 ruled that California prisons were unconstitutional, requiring that the prison population decreased. We had a realignment program that has gone into place, somewhat controversial, with some successes, hard to say. This is yet another tool, one could argue, to decrease the pressure on the prison system, no?
Well, I think that's definitely part of it. The state wants to reduce costs at the prison level, so they're sending people to the county jails.
But it's not even cost, it's the numbers. I mean, they got to get their numbers down or the governor will be held in contempt.
Well, it's both. They're trying to release people from the state prison. The first plan was to shift them from the state prison to the county jails. That's what realignment does. It doesn't reduce the sentences.
True.
It shifts the term of the sentence from the state prison to the county jail.
True.
And what we've seen is the county jails are now getting full of felons who otherwise would have been held by the state. So now when someone is convicted of a misdemeanor crime, if it's less than 90 days of a sentence, they're essentially released immediately. We're seeing more than 90 days, some variation, maybe 5 to 10% of the time, but we're not seeing a month or two for serious crimes. We're seeing a day or two for some serious crimes.
But do Californians consider drug possession a serious crime? I mean, that really gets to the philosophical issue.
Well, that's actually one of the ironies of Prop 47. I think one of the goals was to increase rehabilitation as opposed to jail sentences for people that simply have a possession of any drug. And what used to happen is a person facing felony charges would be offered diversion. If you go to a counseling program and get help, you can get that felony dismissed. Now that person only faces a misdemeanor, and in LA County might only face a day or two or a week or two in county jail. So the public defender's office in LA County, they've essentially told us they're going to advise their clients not to take diversion, not to get treatment, because they're just going to be released as an alternative, and they won't have the strict probationary conditions if they just take the misdemeanor conviction. So it's had kind of an unintended consequence. It's pushing people out of, or moving people out of programs back onto the streets.
But we know that this can happen with the initiative process. I mean, California has a very robust process whereby anyone can draft a law, an initiative, and it can pass the voters. And that's what happened here.
Absolutely.
And so it begs the question, I mean, at a certain level, we could see this coming. I mean, we know that the public is itching on the question of overcrowded prisons to the extent they're aware of that, but just the way we are treating the incarcerated, the way that drug possessors are being treated. And so, you know, is it time for law enforcement to get together and not kick the can and just say, tough on crime, throw them in jail?
Well, it's the legislature that passes the laws.
Of course, but what I'm saying is, and I'm not talking about you specifically, I'm talking about generally speaking. I mean, is it time to look at sentencing reform? Because if this keeps happening, you know, we're going to have our own Willie Horton. You know that.
Well, I think some people consider this sentencing reform by moving this from a felony to a misdemeanor. And certainly public opinion has changed over the years.
But it's sentencing reform. Can I interrupt? Because it's sentencing reform by, I don't know who drafted this, but arguably by non-experts. Arguably. I mean, I don't know who
Well, I'm not
drafted
so
Prop
sure they
47.
didn't know exactly what they were doing.
Well,
I'm not so sure.
No, but you know where I'm going. I mean, wouldn't it be better, one could argue, if the Long Beach City Prosecutor, the Long Beach District Attorney, or LA District Attorney, that leaders in this field do sentencing reform and not just initiative writers?
Well, you raise an excellent point, and that is, how did we get to here? And the way we got here was by not doing minor reforms along the way. Just to give you an example, it would have been good to take the foot off the gas pedal rather than stop the car completely. And essentially, that's where we've come right now. These are drastic measures because it got so bad for so many years. The jails got overcrowded, the prisons got overcrowded, the conditions got worse, the sentencing laws got ratcheted up, not downward. And as a result, we were stuck, the governor was stuck in a very tough position. And that's the result. The result of that is realignment and Prop 47. And now we're seeing the pendulum swung completely the other direction. And you're probably right. Law enforcement and prosecutors, if they had seen this coming, maybe they would have said, let's support some ratcheting down.
And anecdotally, so, I'm active on Twitter, and I saw in the run-up to the Prop 47 election, what I'd call them as limousine liberals, were tweeting about the fact that Prop 47 would decrease the charge for firearms possession if the gun was worth less than $950. So that's like, another one of those kind of unintended consequences. So you have people on the left and the right kind of screaming, wait a sec, I'm not sure about this Prop 47.
Well, that's one good example, just to focus on one thing. It used to be that theft of any firearm, regardless of the value of the firearm, could be charged as a felony. It doesn't have to be a felony, but it could be a felony. Prop 47 takes away the discretion of a prosecutor to file that as a felony. So in the district attorney's office, they would look at the person's background, how serious the offense is. For example, a lot of petty thefts. A lot of petty thefts are filed as misdemeanors. They could have been filed as felonies depending on what was stolen or the person's background, but they're going to file them as misdemeanors. Now, if the person has a really bad record and a long history of recidivism, the DA could file felony
under
charges.
47.
Prior to 47, they could have. Now, after Prop 47, the DA has no discretion.
But isn't there some discretion if there are extensive priors?
The only exception is if they're a sex offender or they qualify with what they call a super strike, like murder and rape. It's going to happen extremely. Less than 1% of the cases will this even be an issue.
What's also challenging, I guess you could say, for folks like yourself, is that Prop 47 is not only prospective, but retro.
Correct. That's why they're resentencing people that have been sentenced years ago.
So how are you dealing with that? Or is that all, I guess...
Well, the DA handles the resentencing.
Right.
Yeah. But we handle a number of cases that were in the pipeline prior to Prop 47. So the offense may have happened before November. They may have been in custody. In fact, many people were in custody waiting for their trial on their felony charges. On the day Prop 47 passed, the next day, those people said, I'm no longer charged with a felony. I want my bail reduced. I've already served 3 months in jail. That's time served on a misdemeanor.
Are you going to now have to hire more prosecutors? Because arguably, you're going to be busier.
Well, my office is going to have to look at hiring more people. The problem is the city of Long Beach has already divided its budget pie and shipped it off. So we're going to have a challenge here. And this is, by the way, what we've been dealing with for the last 5 years. We've had our budget cut every single year, except for the last 2 years. And so it's been very challenging. My office has used technology to do more with fewer people, fewer resources. And so now the question is, can we continue to handle these cases? This is about a third of the DA's cases being sent to our office.
Yeah, exactly. And the drug possession cases, you really are going to be the prosecutor of record on drug possession. I don't know.
The vast majority of cases.
As long as you're not distributing, you're going to be the prosecutor of record. And
every case, yes.
How are you going to do that? There's a lot of drug possession cases.
Well, it's obviously going to be one of the biggest challenges for our office. The LA City Attorney's Office is in the same position.
Any money dedicated under Prop 47 for city attorneys?
There's no money dedicated for local prosecution of the crime. There is money that will be allotted, they say, if there's any savings from Prop 47. So,
so that's not going to your office.
No, in a year or two, there'll be money, they say, to help K through 12 and other programs, but none of that money is earmarked for our office.
He is Doug Haubert, City Prosecutor in Long Beach. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.